Okay, let's pray. Father, we're thankful for the privilege we have to be here in Hebrew class. I pray that you would just bless the teaching, bless the students, local and video, and everyone who will watch this, that it would be spiritually strengthened. Help us to be transformed as we study Genesis chapter 1. Help there to be understanding of the lessons and Lambden. And I just pray that you would be glorified and would bless every aspect of this class. I pray for Jesus' sake. Amen. Okay. I'd like it if you could write up all the forms of kathab on the board. You can write the participle, the perfect, the imperfect, the imperative, and the infinitive construct. And that will be good. Yeah, there's a lot of forms, so yeah, just start somewhere far away. Like normal forms of kathab, you can pretty much assume that on a significant test, you're going to have kathab. Kathav, Kathava, Kathafta, Kathaft, Kathafti. Kathavu, Kathaftem, Kathaftem, Kathavya. But if you need to look, go ahead and look and write down what you need to do. perfects, imperfects, participles, imperatives, and infinitive construct. What about the feminine singular participle, masculine plural, and feminine plural participle? Yep. Kothave, kotheveth, kothavim, kothavoth. That's from many moons ago. Many new moon festivals ago. Infinitive construct. Okay. It's a little hard for me to see over here. And I would suggest when you practice writing them out, write them out like in the order from the third person down, like for the perfect kathav, kathavah, kathavta, instead of kind of like
Third person down.
Yeah.
Sometimes I thought,
Like basically, if you go to lesson 9.
because the way I write my notes,
Uh-huh.
I put it first person, second person, third person.
Oh, no. Do third person first. Don't do first person. I mean, I guess if you get them all, it's not that big of a deal, but I would suggest doing a third person first. Like on lesson 9, how he does it, he starts with Kothav. So, because Kothav is kind of the one they all come off of, so I would suggest starting with that one. So, I mean, as long as they're all there, I could see that they're there, but I would suggest doing it that way. That's the way that they're meant to be learned. On your perfects, I have one thing to say, and that is propretonic reduction. And that will identify 2 errors in the perfect. Yeah.
Are these just forms like Luo or Zhuang?
And it's like Luo, yeah. This is like the Luo equivalent. Kothav 10, Kothav 10. To write. Kothav 10, Kothav 10. Yes. Tov Od. Let me see, where's now? I need to see my Yik Tov here.
This is how I diagram in my notes.
Oh, wow. Let's see, where's Yik Tov?
I've been able to kind of see better patterns in this method.
I can't tell in the imperfects what is what.
Okay, well, the imperfect.
Because I'm thinking Yik Tov, Tik Tov, Tik Tov, Tik Tov, Ek Tov, like that.
So, masculine, singular, feminine, singular, masculine, plural.
Okay. Okay, see, they're all there, so that's good. This doesn't have a vowel.
It does not.
Okay. Why does this have a Dageshan sign? What Dagesh? It depends on what the meaning of is. Okay, let's see. Kothav, Kothavas, Kothavim, Kothavos. It's good that the forms are gradually seeing higher ground, but again, I'd probably rather the way. And you want Dageshes in there too. Dagesh Lenes. Kothavim, Kothavos. Wait a second. Okay. Kothav, Kothaveth, Kothavim, Kothavos. Yeah. It's not Kothavim and Kothaveth. Kothavim, Kothavos. That's back on way in the beginning. They put it on Yoshev. But right there, see? No, that's fine. Kothaveth is fine. And that's not Kothavim, Kothavoth. Yeah, Kothavoth. Good, that's Tov mode. Let's see, we have the imperatives now. Oh, by the way, there are also, the imperfect has alternative forms. If you don't remember the alternative forms, it's not that big of a deal. But there's, on Yik Tavu, there's also Yik Tavun with a, or Yik Tovun with this paragogic noon at the end. But, if you don't remember, that's not that big of a deal, but there is. Yeah, so the imperatives are kathov, kithvi, kithvu, kathovna. Kathov. Yeah, not quite. Not quite. It's like the imperfect with the front dropped off. I don't remember what lesson it's in, but there we are. So there. Kathov, kithvi, kithvu, kathovna. Yeah. Kith. Yeah, not with the I. That's yeah. Uh-huh. Kathov, kithvi, kathov. And then the infinitive construct looks like the imperative singular too. It's also kathov. Yeah. And then I'm not going to ask you now because I want to keep going here, but you can also, like right there, let's see. So there's the infinitive construct, see, kathov. And then there are, you also, it's definitely fair game to have the suffixes. So kathvi, kathvacha, kathvek, like on the, basically the test over lessons 17 to 28, you learned the imperative, you learned the infinitive in there, you learned the imperfect. Well, the imperfect is right before there. And you also learned like the suffixes, like on horse, the independent forms of the pronouns, vocabulary, of course, stuff like that. And a few syntactical things like al plus the imperfect is what kind of command, that kind of thing. So you want to have those down for when you get tested next time. Or before next time, before next class. So. All right, but that wasn't too bad, hopefully, out of just getting out of the blue. But yeah, this should be, should be totally solid. All right, that's the end of that. Any questions on homework? Okay. As long as you meant you didn't write down any questions, not you didn't write any homework down.
No, I did my homework.
That's good. I don't have any questions. I just didn't do it. So.
Well, usually I'll write any questions I have.
Okay, well that's good. All right, well let's go to lesson 32. And these are the last two lessons to learn for the semester. Yay! And when you have the test over the whole semester, lessons 1 to 33, it will have a higher percentage of stuff from 29 to 33 since there hasn't been anything on that at all so far. But there will also, since it's the cumulative test, stuff from before then, especially stuff that's on the previous tests would be kind of the key. If I think it's important enough to stick it on a test, it's that you could see it show up on a semester cumulative test. So I think actually like a lot of this stuff from that 1 through 28 on the final test is just stuff from those 3 previous tests, the 1 to 8, 9 to 16, and 17 to 28. So don't throw them away, don't make them into paper airplanes. You can use those for review. All right, so we can be excited that this is the last 2 lessons, and that can encourage us because they have kind of crazy stuff in these 2 lessons. So we'll talk about hollow verbs here, and if you didn't eat breakfast today, you might be feeling kind of hollow yourself, but these verbs are regularly hollow. In the perfect, so we're on page 148 here, the distinction between second wow and second yod verbs are irrelevant. They doesn't show up. But in the imperfect, there is a distinction, and that's why some are considered second wow and some second yod. The ones with the U vowel in the imperfect are considered second wow, and those with the Hirek yod are second yod. So, and the wow and the yod are both, part of a vowel here. So you have a shurek or a hirek yod, and that's what's going on. So two verb types here, second wow, and he gives you the forms there, the normal, the jussive, and the converted. What is a jussive?
It's third person, male or feminine, singular. That is like indirect imperative.
Yeah, the jussive is the indirect imperative, and I can't remember where he talked about it. There's the normal imperative.
118.
Yeah, 118. So, and it can be plural too. Notice on 118 it isn't just singular. You can have plural jussives also. So, third person indirect imperative. You have those sequences too on 118, 119, which are worth being aware of. So anyway, so that's what that is. It gives you the forms. Now back on page 148, he tells you here that the verbs of the second type, the second yod, are unstable. Sometimes they have the shurek, and sometimes they have the hirek yod. Like if you look on Psalm there, look over at the infinitive construct. It has both sum and seem as infinitive construct. So even though it's second yod. So certain verbs are consistently hirek yod, others can switch around, like lean or loon can be to pass the night. I think about lean like a lean-to, like to spend the night if you're in a tent. So that's one way to remember it. And they were, a lot of them might have lived in tents too. So maybe that's why spending the night is like the English word lean. That might be, maybe not. Okay, the jussive and the form of the wow conversive are distinct. He gives you can see that on page 148 there. And he says, remember the jussive forms are limited to third person, singular, masculine, and feminine. The converted form with the retraction to the accent is commonly found only in these same persons plus the second masculine singular. Otherwise, the converted form is the same as the normal imperfect. So that's good. Okay, so let's read the second wow forms together, the second wow ones, yakum here, and we'll read them all the forms that he gives listed down, and we'll do the same thing with seem.
Where are we starting?
149, the imperfect up at the top there, yakum, takum, takum. Okay. Yakum, takum, takum, takumi, akum, yakumu, tukumena, takumu, tukumena, nakum. Yakom. Oh yeah, we're still going. Okay. Yakom, takom, wayakam, watakam, watakam, watakumi, akuma, nakuma, kum, kumi, kumu, komna, kumi, kumaka, kumech, kumo, kuma, etc. So on the converted ones, why does he go up to watakumi and then just write etc.? Why doesn't it give you all the rest of them?
Because they're just adjusives.
Well, the converted forms aren't the jussives. The jussive is just those two that he gives you there.
Okay.
So yakom, takom, those are the third person indirect imperatives. The converted forms are, remember the wow that flips the sense. So wayakam is an imperfect, but it has the same meaning as if it was a perfect. By the way, what does com mean?
Com means to rise.
Good, yeah, arise. So in other words, Yakom, wa Yakom, if it was just Yakom, you think, or there it would be Yakum, that would be he will arise, right? Takum, she will arise, etc. But with a converted form, it flips it as if it was a perfect, right? So the converted forms, it gives you those forms, but he stops at wa takumi because, like he says on the top of the page, all the ones after that just have the normal and perfect form. Those are the only ones that are different. Those first three, and then he doesn't give you the rest because they're just the same as the imperfect from wa takumi onward. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Let's read the yasim.
Is that the same thing with the infinite construct suffix? There.
Well, no, there he doesn't give you them because he is assuming that you just remember that all the endings for the infinitive construct, the e, echa, ek, o, a, etc. So he typically doesn't give you all those. And really, with a ku, there isn't much to change in the front of it anyway. It's unchangeably long, so you just stick the suffixes on the end. And that's all that you do. So like kumi would be my arising. All right, let's read the yas. What does sam mean, or yasim? Tell me what yasim is. Why don't you translate yasim?
Yasim.
Yeah, yasim, the first one there, the
Would
3
be,
imperfect.
He will sing.
We'll sing. You know what? I was thinking it was something else. I think, but you know what? I think sim is sheer. I think is.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sam is not there.
That's sham. Yeah.
Yeah. Sam.
Yeah, sim is put place, put or place.
Put or place. That's Sam.
Yeah. Has he given you? He must have given you that already.
Yeah.
Yeah, put or place. So yasim was he will put or place. Tasim, she will put or place. Which, at least in my house, it's usually my wife who puts or places things away more often than I do. So I'm thankful for that, for her tasiming there. I do a better job making a mess. But anyway, okay, let's read these forms together. Yasim, tasim, tasim, tasimi, asim, yasimu, tasimena, tasimu, tasimena, nasim. Yasem, tasem, wa yasem, wa tasem, wa tasem, wa tasimi, asima, nasima, sim, simi, simu, semna, sumi, sumecha, sumek. If you're a lawyer and you're watching this, just because I said sumi, okay, you don't, this is Hebrew, all right? All right. Basically, you just have to memorize the imperfect forms, I would say, and the ones that are new, you just kind of have to memorize them. The infinitive construct, you could probably just remember one form and then just to stick the endings on, but a lot of these you have to memorize. And I would also suggest, you might have thought of this already, but if you have a paradigm like this, you do want to be able to instantly think in your head and know what this means. Like if you're memorizing it and you don't know, what the form means, that would be a problem. Okay, imperfect feminine plural of the form takomna instead of tekumena also occurs. Several verbs, mainly with gutturals or resh, have pathak instead of kamatatu for segol in the converted form, e.g. yasur, but wayaser, and he turned aside. Yanuak, but wayanak, and he rested. So that's nice. These ones are weird, these hollow verbs. And these are the ones that you've learned so far that, oh, he has Psalm right down there, that are actually just like what these two paradigms. So you have Gar, Psalm, Kam, Shav, Maith, Psalm, and Sar. And really, in the lexicon, it would either have the wow or the yod in it. So these, of those ones, there are two that are second yod, and the rest are second wow. Which are the two that are second yod?
Second yod.
Yeah. Because these hollow verbs, some of them are second wow, some of them are second yod. Which ones of these are second wow and which ones are second yod?
Shear. Shear to sing.
Yeah, good.
And I guess Psalm is both, isn't it?
No, Psalm is second yod.
Is it?
Psalm is second yod, yeah.
Oh, the infinite construct. I'm looking at on the other
Oh,
page.
no, don't look over that. Remember he says that the second yod ones in the infinitive construct can get the U vowel, even though they're second yod. They're unstable. So if you look over at on 149, you can just see that he gives you the two forms, Yasir and Yasim, to set and to sing. So those are the second yod. And the other ones, Yagur, Yatsum, Yakum, Yashuv, Yamuth. So those are obviously second wow. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's, now the nice thing, even though this is crazy and it's kind of a nasty thing, these hollow verbs, it's the only thing in the lesson. So that kind of makes it better. So go to the next page. So, to make it more exciting, a few verbs have a cholam wow as the characteristic vowel of the imperfect and related forms. So that's good. Ba, to come, which is an important verb, frequent. So in perfect you have yavo, tavo, like that. Imperative bo, infinitive construct bo. Jussive, yavo, converted by yavo. Bosh, to be ashamed, gives you yevosh, bosh. Or, light, yaor, or. It says you some of them have cholam wow, some of them just have cholam, but that's not grammatically significant. It tells you the accent isn't retracted into y yavo, but which is the least thing you have to worry about really. So that's exciting that does that. So hollow verbs really just kind of have to memorize the one more paradigm here, and I don't know a really easy way to just tell you this will make it so that you will instantly know them all perfectly, but at least it's the only thing in the lesson. Do you have any questions about that? No? Okay. English has more weird stuff than Hebrew does.
Does it really?
Yeah. I think English is a harder language to learn than Hebrew, but it's easy for us because we're native speakers. Here's the vocabulary. English is a very Chow-Watic language in how it pronounces things. So vocabulary here. Betza, profit, gain, or advantage. Ma betza, what profit? Saris is a eunuch. Officer, because they made the eunuchs into officers, so sarisim. Why is that irregular, that plural, sarisim? An eem at the end? I mean, doesn't look that irregular to me.
I don't know.
There's no propretonic reduction. It's not sarisim, so the comets still is there. That's why it's irregular. So it doesn't get reduced from saris to sa with the shawah. It just keeps the comets. Adon, the word for Lord or Master, and then with God, Adonai. Can be singular, Adon, and you can have plural if you have several lords or whatever. Shath Yashith, to put, place, set, a synonym of some. And I would memorize the lexical form as sheen, yod, tau, because that's what it would show up as in the lexicon. So the ones that are second yod, memorize them with the yod in the middle. And the ones that are second wow, memorize them with the second wow. So like rots would be in the lexicon underneath resh, wow, tzada. So, yeah, roots,
So,
run.
Sheath is like a sheath you put your sword in.
Hey, that helps you remember it. Go for it. Memorize it that way. Yeah, whatever makes you remember it.
Did that come from there?
Yeah, I doubt it. Nas, Yanus, to flee, what we don't want you to do from the craziness of the hollow verbs. Radaf, to pursue, chase, or persecute. So hopefully you don't feel persecuted in here. Kanaz, to acquire, or purchase or buy. Likrath, toward, to meet against. Hine, behold. He says you are best off not translating Hine, but I think you are best translating it because God put it in there. So Ra'ah, wa Hine anashim ba'im. He saw, and behold, men were coming, which is what he says not to do. But I think you should do what he says not to do. So, then you have some proper names, which I'm not very likely to ask you. Okay. There is a typo in Lesson 32, Exercise A, number 8. The mame should be doubled in midbara, because that's an article on the word midbar. So it fell out. Not the most horrifying thing in the world, but it did. Okay, any questions on Lesson 32? Really, the more Hebrew you do, the more you just start to recognize stuff, and it becomes less horrifying. So, and Lambden does do well in that he gives you all these different ones. Some grammars, they don't get into as much depth in this, and then again, when you just run into it, you don't know what's going on. Lambden also is a first-year grammar that's cited in scholarly commentaries, like the Word Biblical Commentary on Genesis, which is a scholarly commentary, probably by an unsafe person, but it's a scholarly commentary. Like he'll cite reference grammars like Ascenius, whatever, but he'll cite Lambden once in a while. So, all right, let's go to Lesson 33. Geminate verbs. So, it's good. This is the last lesson for the semester, and this is the only thing to learn in this lesson, so those are the good things. The bad thing is that no single class of verbs shows as much variety in the formation of the imperfect as that of the geminate verbs. So, and what does geminate mean? It means the second and third root consonants are identical. No one of these verbs occurs frequently enough to offer a complete paradigm. So the following tables are a compilation of available data. So, here you go. You have two types. You have ones with a holum imperfect and ones with a pathak imperfect. So savav and cal. And savav is what? What does savav mean?
To surround.
Good. Surround, go around. Very good. How about cal?
Kol is voice, right?
Kol is voice, good, but that is not what it is.
I don't remember a kale.
Cal, I don't know if he gave it to you or not.
I worked with a kale.
Remember the cal? It's to be light or of little importance, and in the PL it's the curse, but you don't know the PL yet. So kalal would be to treat lightly or of little importance. So I think about Cal Berkeley, Much of what they said there I had to treat lightly and of little importance, especially all the indoctrination. I don't know if I would curse the place, but
What did it mean?
it means to be light or of little importance, or in the PL it is to curse. And I don't know if he introduced it. He must have introduced it because he doesn't put it in the vocabulary here. So he must have given it to you somewhere. I don't remember where though.
I remember Catone as
That's
little.
small.
Yeah, and he
That's
used
different.
that as importance of little or insignificant.
Yeah, I don't think they're related though. Catone and Kala, because the trilateral root is Kof Lamed Lamed. Well, Catone would be Kof Tau Noon.
Yeah, I don't remember
Yeah.
Tau.
Oh well, there he is. So remember, of little light, little importance, like the indoctrination at Cal Berkeley. Okay, so Savav, the normal, it gives it imperfect. You have Yasov with that holum there. The converted is Yasav. Imperative Sov, infinitive construct Sov. And the Cal, normal Yekal, and then the other forms there. It says in the normal inflection of these forms, the original doubling of the final stem consonant shows up before any suffixed vowel. So in those forms on the bottom of 153, top of 154, you'll notice the forms that end with a vowel. The second root consonant, the doubling shows up. So like Yasobu, there you see the Baith has a doggish forte, and the form ends in U, in a vowel. Or the next one, Tisubena, the Baith has a doggish forte. Well, if you look at the singulars, Yasov, Tasov, there's no doubling. Now, one reason, in addition to the fact that you should learn this just because this does actually, happen in Hebrew, if you don't remember that in the geminate, if you don't have the geminate paradigm down, and you see something like Yasov, there's no doubling. BDB lists things by trilateral root. You might be looking under Yod. You might think the Yod is the first root consonant when it's actually with two baiths at the end. See, so knowing the geminate paradigm helps you just to be able to find stuff in the lexicon. And it might, if you looked in the wrong place, if you poked around, you probably would be able to find it after a little while. But that is worth being aware of. The doubling of the root consonant give you a hint. Okay, maybe this is a geminate. There's two at the end here. But when the doubling's gone, it's a little bit more challenging. Okay, let's say these Yasov holum imperfect types. And I'm going to say them in the order that's given here, which means I'm going to flip the page, say the ones on the top of the next page, and then flip back. Okay. Yasov, Tasov, Tasov, Tasobi, Asov, Yasobu, Tisubena, Tasobu, Tisubena, Nasov. And now let's try the Pathak imperfects. Yekal, Tekal, Tekal, Tekali, Akal, Yekalu, Tekalena, Tekalu, Tekalena, Nakal. Why is Tekalena in brackets? Do you know?
Because it doesn't show up in the Bible.
Yeah, that particular form is not present in the Bible. Yeah. But you might have some other verb that's geminate with that ending, so still worth learning it. Now we have one more type of imperfect, not infrequent. This is where a geminate verb follows the pattern of verb's first noon. So it's geminate, but it acts like its first noon. So here, this is Savav again. But instead of having a doubling, well, here again, you still retain the doubling in the Baith when you have the endings with the vowels, and a few other ones here. But you also have this doubling in the first root consonant as well. Do you remember first noon imperfects?
I remember how to turn the page to it.
Okay, let's do that. Let's just review for a second here. Page 133, first noon imperfects. Because the noon gets eaten up, and it goes into the tummy of the next root consonant. And so, la nafal, there on 133 have yipol, tipol, tipol, tipoli, epol, yipalu, tipolna, tipalu, tipolna, nipol. And by the way, learning these, the better you learn the inflections, even with the exceptions and stuff, it'll save you time in the long term. So it's definitely worth spending your time to do that. Okay, so there's your first noons. And if you go over here on 154, this savav looks very similar, as if it was first noon when it's not. So let's say these. Yisov, tisov, tisov, tisobi, esov, yisobu, or yisobu, tisobna, tisobu, or tisobu, tisovna, nisov. That you probably can remember that the geminates can act like a first noon once in a while and not memorize it as a separate paradigm because it's so similar to the first noons. But you really would do well probably to memorize the standard imperfects here of the cholim and the pathak. Then he says the following further oddities in the inflection, the imperfect are mentioned for reference only. So here he doesn't expect you to memorize it. Sometimes the geminates assimilate to the hollow verb inflection, so they can act as if they were hollow verbs. So, yashud from shadav. And inflections, you can also have alternative forms, such as yekalu instead of yekalu. So there the pathak went to a shawa, and the doubling in the lamed went away. E.g., yazmu, they will consider for the expected yazomu. Rarely one encounters forms belonging to the paradigm of still other types, such as yechemu, they will be worn from chamem, or ti samna, you'll be devastated. You might feel that way right now, from shamam. So that's reference only. Now, the imperatives here are, so just put that in the memory bank somewhere, but you don't need to memorize anything there. The imperative and infinitive constructs also have unusual deviations, but here you have the cholim and the pathak, and so you would do well to memorize this also. So let's say these ones together. Sov, sobi, sobu, sovna. I'll say the infinitive construct ones now. Sov, subi, subecha, subeik, subo, suba, and so on. And pathak ones. Kal, Kali, Kalu, Kalna. And the infinitive construct is the same infinitive construct as you just stick the endings on the kal. The feminine singular imperative also occurs with an ultimate stress, gazi. That's just saying something about stress, that's all. Rani. It is occasionally the infinitive construct appears in the pattern of the regular trilateral verbs, sadod, salol, gazoz. And tam, to be finished, can be either yetam or yetom. Ra, to be bad, can be ye-ra. So basically, lesson 33, to summarize, is crazy. But if you memorize the imperatives, the imperfects and the imperfects, the imperatives, and infinitive constructs for the cholim and pathak type, you should be fine with these. But there's going to be unusual things that happen once in a while with them. You have any questions about that? The whole thing is a question, probably. I would say if you forget what one form is of the geminate, you can survive. Like if you don't know this, that's going to be a big problem. You want to learn this as well as you can, but you can survive and not have everything about it perfect. It'll just make your homework take a little longer, and you might not recognize something in the lexicon or in the Bible as you're reading it. But you can, so, I don't assume you're going to remember every exception that he lists about all this stuff here. But you should try to memorize the paradigm, because that is the lesson, basically. So, okay, vocabulary. Mu'uma means anything, or with a negative, like low. Not anything means nothing. Af is the word for nose. Api, my nose. Apayim is a dual. Sometimes the nose has the dual because it has two nostrils, probably. Nose, it can also refer to your whole face. The word af can refer to your whole face. And it can also be used for anger, probably because, like, if somebody's nose was like, who's really angry, is like nose flares or something. That appears to be where the relationship is between the nose and anger. So, use the subject of chara. So chara apo, means he became angry. Just like chara to lo to him. The object of the anger is expressed with the preposition base. So he became angry with whoever, you have the base. Chasak is to withhold or keep back for oneself. Chanan, to favor, be gracious towards. That's the verb for show grace there. Shamim is to be desolated or appalled. Dam is to be silent or astonished. Madad is to measure. Ivri is a Hebrew. He'im, unless, except that, but rather. Ache, how or in what manner. Aka also means how or in what manner. It means the same thing as ache. That's when he says idam, it means the same thing as above. Okay, that is lesson 33. Do you have anything you want to say? Any questions about lesson 33?
No.
I'd like to do some homework, but we have to catch up on the Bible. The Bible is more interesting than these lessons, but you do need to learn the lessons too. So we'll take a break, and then we will get into the Bible here. Genesis 1 and verse 2. Why don't you read that?
Verse 2.
You know, this chair is, now that I have that, this is a little bit high. I'm going to get the chair here. But you can read it, yeah. Go ahead and read Genesis 1, 2.
1 and 2?
Bereshith.
Oh, you want me to read
Dos.
it in Hebrew?
Yeah, that would be good. You could read it out of the LXX and translate it, I suppose, but that would be for a different class.
I wouldn't be able to translate it if I could read it.
Yeah.
Bereshith bara Elohim eth ha-shameim wa'eth ha-aretz wa-ha-aretz hayata hayatha tohu
Thohu.
huh?
Thohu. See, there's no
Thohu.
dog.
Okay. Thohu wa vohu wa hoshek.
Here it's Hoshek. See the accents underneath the Chef.
Wa hoshek.
Yeah.
El paneh. The home. Wa ruach Elohim marechefeth.
Marachafeth.
Marachefeth. El Pane Ha-Mayim.
Hamayim. All right, and can you translate that? We did last time, but
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was unformed and empty, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God wafted over the face of the water.
okay. So we were on this question about Genesis 1:2. So what does Genesis 1:2 teach about the character of the Ruach Elohim? And what did you say? Did I ask you that at the end of last time? And you already give your. Oh, so what did you say?
I don't remember. I have it written down though.
Okay. So it's a mighty wind, the wind from God, right?
Yeah, we did do this. The Spirit is clearly a person, active in creation. In light of verse 1, with the plural noun, with a singular verb, the context clearly is presenting a plurality of persons that work together and converse together. In the creation account, in verse 26 and 27, this would logically demand co-equality. Marachefeth would offer, this is what I was talking about, why I translated it as wafted, because it seems to present an erratic movement over a single position instead of soaring, smooth action from point A to point B. And it can't perceive the motion of a spirit, but compared it to a movement of wind as observed by objects blown erratically.
All right. Not a bad answer. I think it would establish that the Ruach Elohim is a divine person. It's not just the wind of God. Ruach Elohim never has the meaning wind of God anywhere in the Old Testament, but it's overwhelmingly the Spirit of God. It's like in Genesis 41:38, a man whom the Spirit of God is. Exodus 31:3, I filled him with the Spirit of God, a wisdom, understanding. 35:31, filled him with the Spirit of God. Numbers 24:2, the Spirit of God came on Balaam. 1 Samuel 10:10, the Spirit of God came on Saul. 1 Samuel 11:6, Spirit of God. 16:15, 16:23, 1 Samuel 18:10, 19:20, 19:23, Ezekiel 11:24, 2 Chronicles 15:1, 2 Chronicles 24:20. That's all the text with it in the Old Testament, and it's the Spirit of God. So this isn't just some wind that's just trying to get out of what the text says. Now, the Merachetheth gave you some of those cross references there. Another reason why it wouldn't just be a wind is Merachetheth is not an action a wind would perform. This kind of, you said wafting, wind kind of just blows around. So this is actually an action that's not like that. Did I ask you to parse that? I think you did, right? It's rachaf. No, I gave it to you, I think. It's PL participle, feminine singular absolute from rachaf. I gave it to you, right? I must have, because you don't have a P, you don't know the PL yet, so I must have given it to you. Yeah. Okay. I think the point here is the Spirit completes and finishes the work of creation and also begins to uphold the created universe with the Father and the Son. Having the Spirit do a finishing aspect is appropriate to his divine person because the Trinitarian works ad extra are from the Father, mediated by the Son, and applied or finished by the Spirit. So, like Job 26:30 mentioned, the Spirit garnished the heavens, made them fair. So he took the unformed matter, and so I think here he's taking the unformed matter and forming, preserving the world after that as well. The Deuteronomy 32:11 is the only other text where this verb appears in the PL. It does appear in Jeremiah 32:9, but there's a cow. It's not a PL. And it appears to be an image taken from birds which brood upon their nests and hatch their young by the genial heat they communicate. The Spirit of God, this is what what somebody said. The Spirit of God was brooded on the shapeless mass, and by his influence rendered it productive of so vast a multitude of beautiful creatures. So a lot of exegetes have concluded that the image is like a bird image, like the bird with the young, and then, so the Spirit was like hovering, brooding over them like a bird over the young, and producing making things come into existence that way. So, taking the unfinished matter of the world and quickening it. So that's what is commonly understood to be involved in that, and I think it's reasonable to conclude that with the Deuteronomy text. The Spirit would have to be an eternal person if he's already extant here too. That would be strongly suggested. And since he's performing the divine works of creation and preservation, he must himself be God. But since he's the Spirit of God, he's distinguished from the Father. So you have distinction of persons and also creative acts exercised by the Spirit. So the earth here was tohu vabohu, which is that it was kind of unformed. It wasn't that it was, under some kind of condition of judgment, like a gap theory type situation, but it was just unformed. It was a formless mass, and then the Spirit formed it. So he formed it and, made it into other things. What is it?
I said it almost like an animated.
Yeah. Actually, Henry Morris said that he supplied energy and got wave and energy motion going. So he got the waves starting to flow here and took the lifeless thing and made it motion. So static, lifeless Earth brought into motion through the dynamic, creative efficacy of the Spirit. So the universe was created, but he energized it. Is what he thought it was saying. And I think it's reasonable. Obviously this isn't scientific commentary, but it's going to be scientifically accurate. But I think it's reasonable to include something like that was going on. So he's like, there's a bird image. He was giving it life and getting it perfected and then preserving it after that. The gap theory idea, they say that you should translate this, the earth became without form and void, but that's not what you'd expect. He wouldn't have used the wow consecutive plus subject plus verb in the perfect. You'd expect a different Hebrew form. You'd expect a wow conversive attached to an imperfect if it was that. So it's not the earth became without form and void as some sort of judgment on sin which didn't exist yet here. This is just describing the state. It's not like some judgment. It's just it wasn't formed yet. And then the Holy Spirit made it happen. And apart from the fact that you also have, death and stuff and judgment and sin before too early here for that. Okay, so that's that question. Do you have anything else you want to say on verse 2?
Nope.
Verse 1 is an opening statement. It's both a superscription and a summary. It's kind of equivalent to these are the generations of statements that begin in 2:4 and those other later parts. And then in verses 2 and following, you have the detailed, you have a further description there. Okay, why don't you translate verse 3 and or read it in Hebrew and translate it, and then do some parsing here.
Wayomer Elohim Yahi or Wayahi or.
All right.
Oh, you're waiting for me.
Yeah.
English. Okay.
Yeah, we need some English here.
And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light.
Okay. What is the parsing of Wayomer?
It's a vowel conversive of amer, and a call imperfect 3ms.
Good. And what does Amer mean?
To say.
Good, yeah. And you want to put that down. Put what the lexical form is in the parsing. So cal, imperfect, vowel consecutive, 3ms from Amer to say. I think I get. No, I don't think I did give you Yehi, because you should know Yehi. What is Yehi? Or did I give you Yehi? I did give you Yehi.
Did you?
Okay. Yeah, note in Genesis 1:3, the Yehi is a cal imperfect 3ms jussive from Haya. I think maybe when this was assigned, you didn't know the jussive yet. And Yehi is a cal vowel consecutive 3ms apocryphated from Haya. Oh, if I say it's a vowel consecutive in something like this in these notes, I mean that the form is an imperfect with a vowel conversive or vowel consecutive, because the perfect just doesn't have that form of vowel, so it's going to be an imperfect divide. So just for an FYI, for if I later have a form to give you a form like that. And Yehi is an apocryphated form. What does apocryphated mean?
It means that, like, the third hay is dropped.
It's that shortened form, yeah. Okay, Tov Ma'od. Let's see, is there anything else, other parsing here on verse 3? Relatively simple verse here. What does the text critical note by Ginsburg say at the bottom?
Oh, it says,
Something in Hebrew.
in many books, either manuscripts or in manuscripts, in many books, manuscripts, and oh wait, here I got it written. Thus, in many books, manuscripts, and copies, the text. Other copies, I think, Ben Asher, let there be light.
Okay, that's not bad. That was a hard no. So the first word, Cain, is thus. Barov, the next word is ba is in. Rov is, many or most. Sepharim is the books or codices. That abbreviation is Kethuv Yod, if you looked it up, so written by hand. That's the kof, the 2 lines in the Yod. Uva nosachoth is, and in is the wa and the beth at the front. So in other, and that's the word copies, and then I think you supply the word and. And that last word, the charafos, is additions. So thus in most codices written by hand, and in other copies in additions would be the first sentence. Then that next, the noon with a / aleph. Do you remember what that stands for? I'm trying to remember. It means in other copies. I'm trying to remember what the exact abbreviation thing it stands. So, do you have this with you?
Yeah, I think it's other copies.
It means other copies. Yeah, it's nosachoth acherenon. Other copies. So yeah, that means other copies, and that's what it stands for. So other copies, then that's Ben Asher. So other copies of Ben Asher have Yehi or, and then it says Ben Naphtali Yehi or. So what's the difference? The difference is the Ben Asher text there has lacks the munach. if you see on where it says Ben Esh, there's a he or, and there's no munak, there's no accent, but instead there's the what's it called?
Method.
There's not the method, makef. There's the makef, and so then those two words are considered as one. So in other words, he says some. So in other words, what he's just telling you that some Ben Asher copies have a makef, and then the Ben Naphtali tradition has a munak with no makef. So it's basically a note about the lacking the munak and the makef. It's not saying the words are present or absent. Both of them have the words, just the accent and the. So, and you'll run across notes like that, and those notes, yeah. So there are these different notes like that in there that Ginsburg puts in there for you, which is kind of interesting. When in doubt, I think we do well to just go with what the text says, based on considerations of preservation. So, okay. So all that note told you is that some manuscripts of the Ben Asher tradition don't have what the text has, the he or. So other Ben Asher ones and the Ben Naphtali have the he or just like it is in the text. So. Okay. In Genesis 1:3, state what word has the major disjunctive accent within the verse, and what that signifies about where the verse has a pause, and thus is a very good candidate for a common English translation. You can also check pages 21202 of Lambden for help.
It's the word or.
Oh, or. And what accent is on or?
An athnach.
Athnak, yes. Athnak, which you can remember like the Aflac duck. Like it looks like the duck. Aflac, Athnak.
A beak.
Yeah, and did you look at 201, 202 of Lambden?
201 or 202 of Lambden.
Yeah, that's exactly. That can help.
I might have.
It's been a little while.
Yes, since I was back that far. 201.
Yeah, he just tells you, this is, Lambden tells you a little bit of info on the accents. It's about as detailed as he gets on them. But just tells you that Athnak is the main divider of the verse. And then on 202 he mentions that words underneath the Athnak or with the Saluk have these slightly lengthened vocalizations. Yeah, so there's reasonable. So where would it be reasonable to stick a comma based upon the fact that the Athnak is there?
And God said, "Let there be light, comma."
Yeah, so it's reasonable to expect there to be a comma after there because that's where the Athnak is. So note from this verse that the God of Israel is the creator of light, and so its ultimate source. So he's going to create the sun later as a source of light to bless his people, but since God is the ultimate source of light, the sun, even though it's approximate and more immediate source, is not worthy of worship, as it was by the nations that surrounded Israel in Moses' day. So, if you consider the connection of verses 2 and 3, you can see the creative act of God originated from one person in the Godhead, was conducted through the instrumentality of his word, and is practically applied and completed by God the Spirit. And further revelation will develop that as being from the Father through the Son, who is the Word, and personally applied by the Spirit. And just like our nature is revealed in the way we act, like we like certain things, like we like certain types of food or whatever, it'll affect how we act. So God's nature is triune, is revealed in his acts. His ontology is revealed in his economy. His being is revealed in his actions. So, in the new creation too, God the Spirit draws men to the Father through the Son by the Word also. 10 times in the chapter it does say God said. He does work through his Word. And so now here he created light. Obviously visible light is involved in this, but the electromagnetic spectrum really would be involved too. So here we have electromagnetic forces brought into operation. So basically the forces are now activated here from the static and formless matter. And certainly, since God created by his personal will, there's a distinction, creator-creature distinction here. This text here doesn't specifically say God created the darkness, but Isaiah 45:7 mentions that God created the darkness also, in case you were wondering about that. So, someone said that the directive Yehi is reserved for the creation of celestial phenomena, and its usage may be an allusion to the divine name Yehovah. God said is introduced frequently here is found here and in further texts. The translation and God said in Latin is, or let there be light is fiat lux in Latin. And that gave birth to the phrase creation by fiat. That's where that phrase came from. And so here the creation was by his command. So if you're wondering where that phrase came from, now you know. Okay. Anything else you want to say about verse 3? It's great. God created the light, and there it was. All right. Let's do verse 4.
Wayer Elohim eth haor ki tov Wayavdale Elohim Bain Haor Wu Bain Ha Hoshek.
Uvain HaChoshech. You're reading pretty well, though. Like, your Hebrew reading is not bad for, not having done tons and tons of it. That's good. Tov mode. Okay, why don't you translate that? What does that mean?
And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided between the light and between the darkness.
Okay, great. What is the parsing of yar there, wayar?
Wayer. It's a vowel conversive of ra'ah, cal imperfect 3ms, apoc. What is the whole apocated?
Yeah, it's apocated. Did I give it to you?
I don't think so. Maybe
Okay.
you did.
That's pretty good of you to say. Oh, I did. Huh. I was thinking, wow, you even identified as apocated. That's pretty good. Oh, it's right there, yeah.
I have caught on to that, and so I've been copying it in my other notes.
Yeah, so, but you had to look up, see this for him to see at least. So, yeah, I think when you translated this, we hadn't got to those apocated forms yet. Yeah, so it's the C is the apocated cal imperfect. So the hay dropped off at the end of ra'ah.
Oh, yeah.
And Wayavdale, what's the root of that? I gave you the parsing, the hifil and so on, but what's the root of it?
The root is, Wayavdale. Bathel.
Badal would be the root.
Badal.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to know what vowels from, just put the 3ms perfect. So here you have Baith, Daleth, Lamed, so Badal. And what does that mean?
Badal.
Yeah.
He divided.
Divide or separate. He separated between the light and the darkness. Tov ma'od. Okay. What are the accents in the verse? Since you're just learning the accents, I have a decent number of accent questions to kind of get you acclimated. It's probably a little bit out of proportion to the importance of them compared to other stuff, but that's because you're just learning it right here. So it's and you want to. This is a great way to learn them is by having to identify them. So why don't you go word by word and just tell me each word and tell me for each accent whether it's also conjunctive or disjunctive or an impositive or prepositive or postpositive.
Okay. We're on verse 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
seem to miss a bunch of them in
Uh-oh.
writing. Right. Let me revert to this.
There was a
All right.
homotuleton or whatever it is when you skipped over.
Wayere is what is it? It's not in here.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Is it a?
See that little Z underneath the yod?
Mm-hmm. I don't think I have it on my list, unless it's a darga.
Yep, it's a darga.
Oh, it looks like an S on this one.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Zorro?
I might have when I was young.
It was about this guy who was a sword fighter. So that looks like a Z kind of, and he was like a darga, sounds kind of like dagger. So it's a way, but if Zorro is not in your head, it's not going to help you too much.
I know what a Zorro is.
What?
I know what a Zorro is.
Okay, Zorro is the spider guy. So it's a darga, and it's darga
Darga.
prepositive, postpositive, impositive.
It is impositive conjunctive.
Good. Good. And how about on? Okay, and next word.
The next one is
Elohim.
Elohim, which is a tabir,
Tavir. Good.
which is disjunctive, impositive.
Great.
And then on Ha'or, is it Tifka?
Tifcha. Yep.
Now, what's the difference and how do you tell the difference between a Tifka and a Mayala?
That's an interesting question. Now, I want to have the same handout that I'm looking at that you're looking at. Which one are you looking at? Are you looking at, that's the one from, what's his name?
Page 10 and 11. From much
So tell me right now, the tifcha is a conjunctive or disjunctive, and impositive or postpositive or prepositive?
The Tifka is disjunctive, impositive, and the Mala would be a conjunctive, impositive.
Let's see, where are you here? Page 10.
Yep, 10 and 11.
Oh, that one, the me'ala, that is only on a word with saluk, and it indicates like if there's the accent before that syllable. So notice in the example there on the non-positive conjunctive accents, the le, he, halo, the word with the me'ala on it. Notice there's a saluk too at the end. So that's going to be much less often that, I mean, that's only going to mean a word with a saluk. So otherwise, it's going to be the tifcha.
Okay.
Good question. There's a few accents that are confusing. I didn't even actually think about that. That might be a confusing one, but I see how it could be. Good. Why doesn't the eth have an accent, an eth ha'or?
Because it's connected with the dash.
Good. Which is, what's that dash?
Metheg.
Metheg?
Meth.
Not a metheg.
Metheg.
No. It still isn't a metheg. It's makef.
Makave.
It's a makef, not a metheg.
Makave.
Yeah, the metheg is a little one that shows you whether it's a comet or a comet's a tooth.
Okay.
Remember? Like if you want to know whether it's a long syllable or a short syllable. It's that little line. Like here's comets, and let's say you weren't, there was some, it wasn't clear whether it was like a, you could have a line right there.
Oh, yeah.
That's the method.
That's a metheg.
Yeah. Soon time. Okay, so that was the tifcha. Next word.
What was that word? Then tov is the athnak.
Good.
Then
And athnak is conjunctive, disjunctive.
disjunctive, and is prepositive.
No, no, no.
No.
It's impositive.
Impositive.
Yeah, Athenac is impositive.
Okay.
They'll tell you if they're prepositive or postpositive in the like charts like this.
Okay.
The large majority are not that way.
Impositive.
So that that Athenac is just impositive.
Okay. And then the next one is Lagermea. Lagerme?
It's actually not. It's a munak. That's conjunctive accent number 1. Lagerme has that line after the word and the little square thing.
Okay.
So here, there's no line after the word, so you know it's munak. Can't be Lagerme. Can you see the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. And so munak is conjunctive and impositive.
On my sheet, I actually had the right answer.
Oh, really? Oh, good. Good for you.
Maybe I should look at my notes.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, Elohim has nothing on my notes. So it would be a little, or Zakef Katon.
Good. Sakef katon, which is?
Disjunctive impositive.
Good.
Bane is a Merka,
Good.
and that is a conjunctive post positive.
No, Mirka is just impositive. Mirka is just impositive.
Hmm.
It doesn't tell you anywhere. If you look at segolta, number 3 on the disjunctive list there, it tells you post positive. So if it doesn't tell you something like that, then it's just impositive.
Okay. Then Haor is a tifka, disjunctive impositive. And Wabane is, again, the Merka as a conjunctive impositive. And Hoshek has a sof pasuk and a siluk.
Good. Saluk is a line, sof pasuk is the 2 big dots at the end. Good. Tov mode. Verses, the accents divide the verses into like halves, and the main division is the Athnac. And then it can divide with segol, like so here this would divide it in half, and the halves don't have to be equal length. Those halves, it can be divided by segol ta, zakef katon, and now my mind is blanking out. The one that's the 1 dot, which is kind of funny. I can't remember the name of it.
Rabia.
Yeah, Revia. So, and you can see how they can show smaller division, 3 dots, 2 dots, 1 dot. Mm-hmm. So it's like that's how it kind of breaks down. Then the different halves. Then the conjunctive accents kind of are mixed in, but those are how it would break down. And Muraoka mentions that to you.
Yeah, it didn't do much on the accents yet.
Yeah, that's totally fine, totally fine. You are, I mean, many first-year students don't learn anything about them at all, and then they don't even know what these little marks are in their Bibles. Okay, what are those lines above the F, the Tov, the Yavdil, and the Uvain and the Hachoshek? What are those straight lines?
I don't know.
Well, if you look at page 53 of Ya'un Muraoka, you could get some help, and it would tell you. But I don't know. I don't think I gave you printed that page out for you. But on the website, it was Or maybe it is on there. I think you do actually have page 53. You have it with you somewhere? Sometimes as we go through here, I will reference pages that are not in your photocopies, but you can get them on the website and download it. Like I might reference something in Weeks, treatise on the actions or whatever.
Yeah, 53 is a big page.
Okay, good. So if you're on page 53, he tells you that line is a rapha. See, we're talking about rapha. It's like paragraph 12.
Yep.
So rapha is that horizontal stroke over consonant in a letter, and it draws attention to the fact that consonant doesn't have a dagesh or a mapik. So that's what that line is. And so it can indicate the absence of a dagesh forte, or the absence of a dagesh lene, or that a final hey doesn't have the mapik, so it's not pronounced. So you can see in verse 4 there, like eth, wa yar Elohim eth haor. So the tau has a rapha over it, if you look at the verse. And that's because that tau is a Bagad Kapat letter, and it doesn't have a dagesh inside. Or later in the Wayavdale, there's a rapha over the Beith because it's a spirit, not a stop. While Bain, Yavda Elohim Bain, there's a dagesh leni in the Beith, so it doesn't have a rapha. See? So that's what that line is. It's a rapha.
Why is there a rapha over the aleph in verse 3, wa yomer?
Verse 3, let's see.
Very first word. Like,
Yeah, look at that.
Olives
Yomer,
can't
Elohim.
take
Yeah,
it.
olives don't typically. That is a good question. I don't know if I thought about that before, why there's a rapha there. I'll have to remember that and try to look into that. I'm off the cuff. I do not have a good reason to tell you about why that's there.
Okay.
But it's a rapha, though. So.
Zerafa.
No. And what's that? Well, the other line. So most of those lines are rafas, and then there's a line between the eth and the or, and that's a makef. And on Muraoka, on the same page, right after the paragraph on rafa, it talks about makef and what it does. So, and I'm not going to say any more about makef right now, but just that he talks about the makef right after the rafa. So there's their technical stuff there. What attribute of God is demonstrated in his actions of Genesis 1:4, and how should you respond to that attribute?
Was that a question on the sheet?
It was.
Okay. Sorry, my lap's not big enough.
Okay.
He saw light, identified it as good, which all he creates is good and only can be since he is good. He also divides light from darkness as a creative act, revealing sovereignty over his creation as he is omnipotent.
Okay. So how should we respond to this attribute?
Um,
We just say, wow, that's neat.
well, if he's sovereign over creation and we are his creation, we should submit to his sovereignty.
Okay, sure. Anything else?
Probably.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I
I'm
think
sure
probably.
You got a few notes.
I think you could see his holiness and separating the light and the darkness, like 1 John 1:5, which alludes to this. You know, it says, "This then is the message we have heard of him and declare unto you that God is light and in him is no darkness at all," alluding back here, I think, to it. Also, as a result of this division between light and darkness, both serve useful tasks in the creation. like in Psalm 104, 19:26. So God has a purpose for the day and the night, the light and the darkness. It's possible that the division of light from darkness refers to the separation of the earth into its hemispheres, where one is in light and others in the darkness. We can also see God's orderliness in that he separates the light and the darkness. And that would also show the day-night division on the first 3 days is like that on verses 4 and following. Like here in verse 4, you have Yavdeel Elohim Bein Ha'or Uvein HaChoshech. This is before the creation of the sun on day 4. Verse 18, after you have the sun, it says, Ula Havdeel Bein Ha'or Uvein HaChoshech. Very, very similar terminology in verse 4 and verse 18, which would indicate that it's the same sort of days here. Since there's a similarity between the light there and the light givers in the second half, they're both dividing the light from the darkness, so their purpose is similar, since the purpose of the light bearers after they're created is to separate the day and the night. Same before this as well. So probably the earth is rotating on its axis here, and light is coming from a direction, so possibly from God himself. While we do see, this does teach us about God's separateness or holiness. Separateness and holiness are the same attribute. It wouldn't indicate that sin was extant, because God's whole creation is very good here. This is a separation that's wholesome. It's towards greater order, giving these parts of creation their particular purposes, their particular lots, their slots. Other texts in Genesis 1 with this verb, this Wayavdeel, is in verse 4, verse 6, verse 7, verse 14, and verse 18. Those are the only texts in the whole book of Genesis with the verb to separate or divide, right here in Genesis 1. So what's separated is the light from the darkness, the waters above and the waters below, and day from night. And the separation isn't a malignant separation, like when sin comes into the world and there's like a malignant separation. Men became separated from God. This is just a separation to greater usefulness and purpose, just like the separation of day and night, and waters above and waters below. So God saw that it was good, and that also shows the creation is imbued with God's goodness. So there's not this idea of like this primordial evil, like a yin-yang type evil, which God is like setting aside here or something. So how should we respond to the attribute of God's holiness and light? I'm going to read you a quote. Several sweet thoughts arise here. God's approbation of his work. The light was good, James 1:17. And how good and precious is Jesus, who cometh to us from the Father, and who is the light and the life of men. God divided the light from darkness. Yes, there is an everlasting separation, as in the natural world, so in the spiritual, between light and darkness. 2 Corinthians 6:14. The first day of the world was a day of light. So the first day in the spiritual world, and the new life in Jesus, is light indeed from the dead. Thus there is a beautiful correspondence in both. Hail thou, holy Lord! As the sons of God shouted for joy when the light of creation sprung out of darkness, so angels celebrated thy victory, when by thy glories of thy resurrection life arose from the dead. And how ought thy people to adore thee, who are interested in this great salvation? That was a quote from Robert Hawker's Poor Man's Old Testament Commentary, which has a lot of good devotional thoughts. Not always the most carefully exegetical, but it's a lot of nice devotional thoughts. Robert Hawker's Poor Man Old Testament, Poor Man New Testament Commentary. Now you actually can't really be super poor to buy it because it's kind of expensive, but I think you can find it on Google Books if you want, some good applications. Okay, that's verse 4. Anything else you want to say about verse 4?
No.
All right, let's translate verse 5.
Okay. Wayikra Elohim. Wayikra.
Excuse me, Wayikra.
Wayikra Elohim Laor Yom Walachoshek. Walachoshek. Kara la, la, Lila, Yella, Lila, Wayahi Erev, Wayahi Boker Yom Echad.
You know what? That's a long syllable. So it is Layla. It is Layla. It's an audible shalom, not a silent shalom. Layla. Wayahi Erev, Wayahi Boker Yom Echad. Okay. Let's get a translation here.
And that was verse 4?
5.
5, okay. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and it was evening and morning, day 1.
You said it was evening and morning?
It was evening and it was morning.
Yeah, that would be
Day
a little
1.
more lower because there are 2 Wayahis. Yom Echad. And you said day 1 at the end?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Wayikra, what is that?
Okay. It is a while conversive. You're waiting for parsing, right?
I am.
Okay. While conversive of kara, a verb, which is he called, or to call.
Mm-hmm.
A verb call imperfect, 3ms.
Good. What's the subject of Wayikra?
The subject is Elohim.
Yeah, good. Elohim. And you have kara later in the verse 2, which is a cal perfect 3ms from the same verb. And the Wayahis are just like they were before. They're cal, well conversive 3ms apocryphated forms. I don't think there's any other words that are difficult in there in particular. Can you give me the parsing of Layla and explain the vowel underneath the first lamed? Hint, see the question about Mayim in Genesis 1:6 below.
Okay. It is the parsing of it.
Mm-hmm.
It is not written on my sheet. It's feminine noun, right?
It is. Yeah, you do want to write it down. And if you forget or something, you can write it down in class. Just put in a red pen. But it's a masculine singular absolute from Layla, which means night. It's not construct. It's absolute, and it's masculine singular. Now the lexical form is Layla, with the pathak underneath the first lamed. Why is there a comets here? Why is it Lila? Though if you didn't answer this question, you might not know.
I do have it answered.
Okay.
It is because it's a disjunctive and positive accent causes vowel inflections per Lambden, paragraph 152.
Yeah, basically, and it isn't just like once in a while, maybe a few other major disjunctives, but essentially it's the athnak where those things will happen. So here there's the athnak and the saluk. So the athnak lengthens the pathak to comets. That's basically the reason. So it's a pausal form, and that's why it gets lengthened. Good. You can see from that there is interplay between the vowels and the accents. It's reasonable to think that they were both, put in there at the same time, which I think would be by the original authors. All right, Tov Ma'od. Do you have any questions about that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, in Genesis 1:5, what is the name of the line between the two words Elohim and La'or? And so see also Genesis 1:10, 21, 27. Ya'un Muraoka, Gesenius can give you some assistance. If you want tons of detail, you can look at Weeks, which is on the website, pages 119 to 129. But you don't have to look at Weeks because he's more detailed than you would need. And Gesenius and those particular pages, Ya'un Muraoka, are also on the website. So do you know what that line is?
It's a pasek.
Good. Pasek.
Pasek.
And what does it do?
It's separating word that the word that ends and starts with the same letter.
Yeah, it's in Gesenius. He gives you. He talks about pasek on in paragraph 15 of Gesenius. He gives 4 different uses of it. Which is, by the way, it's interesting. Gesenius says this is pre-Masoretic. So he says these are very ancient, these paseks, which is kind of interesting. Of course, he thinks that the vowels were added later, but he says this was very old. So, but there were 5 rules. It divided between identical letters at the end and beginning of 2 words, or divides identical or very similar words. It divides between words that are absolutely contradictory, like God and evildoer, or words that are liable to be wrongly connected, and heterogeneous terms like Eleazar the high priest, comma, and Joshua. So here, Elohim and Laor, there's that pasek between them. It's interesting. Gesenius' pasek is very early, and then Muraoka says it's late, or the vowels. So I guess when you don't think, it was get passed on, they don't really know what's going on with it. So here, this is, if you looked at Weeks said this was an extraordinary pasek that is on the first word, sometimes for the accents Pasha, Tavir, and Zarkov. And Genesis 1:5 was an example of that. So that's the type of pasek. But you didn't need to put that. If you just said it was pasek, that's fine. That's all you need to know. But if you looked at Weeks, pages 119, he actually on page 100, he actually gives Genesis 1:5 as an example of this type of pasek. But that's, you didn't need to get into detail that much. And actually, Weeks tells you what type of pasek it is in the other text in Genesis 1:2. So if you really want to get into that, you can look and see. Weeks says that it separates the divine name from the one of those accents, which Genesis 1:5, 10, 27 all have that. So not the most major thing in the whole verse, but just so you know, that's what that line is a pasek. Okay, in Genesis 1:5, in the following days of creation, would Moses and the audience reading Genesis have understood the passage, not Moses, J-E-D-P, would they have understood the passage as a reference to literal days, to long ages through which slow and gradual evolutionary processes took place, or a symbolic, non-temporal reference? And why?
This is obviously a 24-hour period. The first use of the word yom is capitalized to identify, of course not in the Hebrew, but in English, to identify it being named by God, being defined as light by God, and day opposite to night, as BDB said in, I should have said, quote, day opposite to night, unquote, BDB 398. Night being the name given to the period of darkness, night opposite to day, quote, night opposite to day, alternation of day and night divinely ordained, i.e. within one whole day as close of day, BDB, unquote, BDB 538. The second use of the word yom is here defined by evening and morning, BDB 398. That was also a quote. Being, quote, defined by evening and morning. Thus, qualifying as a 24-hour period in which evening is defined as, quote, sun setting evening, unquote, BDB 787, and the, quote, morning as the dawn, the darkness, light through cloud rifts, etc., unquote, BDB 133. God took great care to define exactly what he meant within the context day, night, evening, and morning, and could not be any clearer.
Okay. Yeah, I think that somebody who just read this would definitely conclude that they're literal 24-hour days. Number of reasons, you gave some reasons. When you have a numerical adjective attached to the word day, and there are 200 known cases of this in the Old Testament, the meaning is always a 24-hour day, like first day, second day. Like in number 7, you have a bunch of that. When you have the plural form days, which is over 700 times in the Old Testament, it's always literal days, like 6 days in Joshua 6:14, something like that. So those are two very conclusive reasons. A creation, quote, week that was 6 indefinite periods would also not really fit Exodus 20, the pattern of God's cycle of work and rest. If God created in 6 days and then rested the 7th day, that would fit the pattern in Exodus 20 with the Sabbath. But if God worked 6 long ages as a pattern for man to work 6 literal days, I don't know how that would work out super well. Though they might like it if the 7th day was a long age. They might like that for vacation, I guess. But, the day age theory also would require death before the fall, which is contradictory to other Romans 5:12 and 1 Corinthians 15:22. So there's definitely good reasons to include their 24-hour days here, not who knows what symbolic things. Some other general thoughts on verse 5. God's naming the light, the atmosphere of the land, and the darkness shows the sovereignty over them. The ancient Near East, when you would name something, it would show your sovereignty. So name giving was associated with creation and dominion, for if you give a name, you have power over the object. So here, God's naming them shows his sovereignty over time and space. You should also note the name giving doesn't initiate or cause the creative act, but it finalizes it. He creates and then he names it, versus like a word faith thing where you speak it into it, where like, I don't know. But the naming is finalizing it, not creating or causing it. I think also God creating over the course of 7 days rather than instantly in like 1 second would also be a paradigm for his development of his purposes in history over successive ages. So, another note too, the word one, echad, can also be used as an ordinal first in Hebrew and Akkadian as well. So you could say the first day instead of day 1. I'm not saying day 1 is wrong, but first day is fine. Echad doesn't have the article here, you can notice in the verse, which would indicate there's recurrence of day and morning. It's not until the 6th day and the last day, the 7th day, that they're articular with the end of the creative work there. So, and there's the evening and the morning too, which would indicate literal days. Okay, anything else you want to say on verse 5? No? Okay, let's take a little break and then we'll go to verse 6 here. Okay, let's translate Genesis 1:6.
Okay, verse 6. Weyomer Elohim Yahi Rakia Bathok Hamaim Wihi Mevdil Bain Mayim Mayim La Mayim.
Okay, good.
Which is translated as...
So you can't even say it's all Greek to me because this is Hebrew class.
I have it somewhere in here. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the water," and it was.
And it was.
And it was. He separated between waters from the waters, and God made the firmament.
Oh, no, you're in verse 7.
Am I? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, can you? Well, how did you do the second half of verse? I think I heard the second half of verse 6 in there, but it kind of went somewhere. And it was, and you had this pause there, but.
That's all I have written. And it was.
Yeah, that's not the end of the verse. Somehow the end of the verse. Okay. So the first half of the verse, you have Vayomer Elohim, and God said, Yehi, let there be.
Okay.
The
and he separated between waters from the waters.
Oh, good. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I put a period in the wrong spot.
Okay. So it's the we he there is another jussive, 3ms jussive. So and let there be, and let it. So let the firmament, wayahi, let the firmament mavdil divide or separate, bain between mayim lamayim, the waters from the waters. Did you say water or waters?
Watchers.
Yeah, because they are plural. Mayim looks like a. Well, yeah, they're all plural. So, okay. I gave you. I said note also B2B on Bain for the translation of Bain Mayim Lamayim. Did you look at that?
I'm pretty sure. On Bain?
Yeah. I give you that. I said, note on Genesis 1:6, Mav deal is a Hippial masculine singular, blah. Note also B2B on Bayan for the translation of Bain Mayim Lamayim. Is B2B with you?
I do.
Okay, so if you look on page 107 of BDB, unless you have this somewhere already, it's 1B. And nice thing about a pretty detailed lexicon like this is it gives you some of these syntactical things too. Like he doesn't just say bane, between. One word definition, leave it at that. He gives you a bunch of stuff here. So you have number 1 there, and it says the prev is always excluding the dual preposition interval of between. Then it goes down, there's letter A, most commonly by repeating bane as Genesis 13:3, etc. Then B, more rarely by bane lamed. You see that?
I see 1.
1. Okay, beneath 1, there should be a letter A, and then there's a B. Yeah, so there's this more rarely by bane lamed, Genesis 1:6, dividing bane mayim lamayim, literally in the interval of waters with reference to waters, i.e. between the waters and the waters. And it gives you a bunch of other texts. So that's what I wanted you to notice about that. So sometimes the lexicon helps you figure out how to translate it. Like right there, it gives you some useful information about that construction. Then the badal, of course, is from to separate or divide again. Do you have any questions about the translation of the verse? Hey, in Rakia, Yahi Rakia, why am I pronouncing it Rakia instead of Raki? Well, it's a silent ayin, but what's that pathak under the ayin?
I don't remember what it's called. Is there a name for it?
There is the furtive pathak.
Yep.
You remember that now?
Yep.
You? Okay, good. Yeah, it's the furtive pathak on Rakia. Excellent. All right. Then we have the next question here. In Genesis 1:6, why does the first mayim have a pathak underneath the name, but in the lamayim, at the end, a comet is under the name? And Lambden as the explanation, but it's similar to something that we already talked about here.
That was a question?
Yep, it sure was.
Disjunctive and positive accents. Siluk. Inflection on vowel.
Yeah, the Saluk makes a change from a pathak to a comets, which is, if you look at Lambden page 201, 202, on page 202 it's A, letter A. He says, words standing at the end of the major verse divisions, and thus especially with Athenak and Saluk, are said to be in pause because of the break in the recitation of the text of these points. Such words may have a vocalization slightly different. Following changes are most frequent, and the first one is pathak to comets. So kothav versus kothav, if that was a pausal form. If there was an Athenak or Saluk there. Then also segol to comets, and then letter C. He describes a third change there. So it's letter A, page 202, London. Okay. So here in Genesis 1:6, God just speaks. He doesn't battle the waters or struggle with the waters like in the Babylonian account of creation, where Marduk had to struggle with Tiamat to create the world. He just creates the firmament, slides it between the waters, and here we go. We're all set. So, anything else you have to want to say about Genesis 1:6? No? Okay. Let's do 1:7.
Okay, 1:7. Wayas Elohim eth harakia wayev deo bain hamayim asher mitechath lara Kia, Wubain, Hamaim, Asher, Mael, La Rakia, Wayahi, Cain. Which says, and God made the firmament and divided between the waters which were from under the firmament and between the waters which were from above the firmament. And it was so. And that's verse 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Tov ma'od. Okay. In that verse, I gave you what the parsing for Yas. It's from Asa. Cal, while consecutive, 3 apocryphated. And Asa means?
He made.
He made. Good. And then we have another Yav deal at separation divide. Do you have any other parsing or translation questions on verse 7?
I don't think so.
Okay. Tell me, so we have a question here. And one reason I'm asking about the accents in this one, too, is there are a few different ones that weren't in the other verse. So identify the accents of this verse.
Okay. Wayas is Muna.
Munak, okay.
Munak, which is a conjunctive and positive.
Good.
I don't know. I can't even read my own writing half the time.
It's all Hebrew to you.
Eh,
Maybe Arabic.
well, this typed I can read it, but when I write with my hands, it's worthless. Where am I? 7.
You're on Elohim, the second word.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was right.
Zarka.
Zarka, which is a disjunctive post-positive.
And you can see how far over it is, right? It's
Mhm.
way out at the end. So post-positive. Good. Zarka, disjunctive post-positive. By the way, at least in my MS Word program, that accent doesn't appear. It becomes a crazy, wacky thing, even with a accordance font, which is Yehudit, which has all the accents and vowels for some reason. It doesn't like Zarka. So anyway, go ahead.
And then,
So if I ever like reprint a verse on a handout or something, and there's supposed to be a Zarka, it won't be there.
What if you use the same program to change it to the same font?
Hey, I'm not an expert in stuff. You can figure it out. Like in accordance, the Zarka's there. You can see it in the text. But in MS Word, it becomes a crazy symbol. I don't know why. And I'm sure that, I mean, considering how popular it is for people to write Zarkas, like just millions every day.
it's one of my favorites.
Okay, what's next?
Harakia. Rakia is sagulata.
Segolta.
Segulta.
And see how it looks like a segol? It's just up on top.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an easy way to remember the name of that one, Segolta.
Segulta, which is a disjunctive post-positive.
Good.
And then Wayevdeo has a ravia, disjunctive impositive. Bain has a yativ, disjunctive prepositive.
I don't believe that is a yathid.
No.
One reason is it's not pre-positive, among other reasons. Notice that the symbol for the accent follows the vowel. It's after the tsere.
Okay.
So is there another accent that has the same, looks like that, but isn't pre-positive?
Mahupak.
Yeah, mahupak.
Mahupak
And what is that?
is a conjunctive impositive.
Good. That's conjunctive and positive.
Okay. So then if it's a prepositive, it precedes the vowel points.
Yeah, if it's pre-positive, it's going to be all the way over.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the next one is Hamayim, being the it's the double one.
Oh, wow. I see what you're thinking.
Gershayim.
I see why you're saying it's Gershayim, but notice how close the two lines, if it's Gershayim is just a double Gerish. Notice how close those are.
Mm-hmm.
Here, there's a big space between the two little squiggle marks. So it's not Gershayim.
Okay. Is it a Gashta?
Gashta, like the prophets of Baal had a Gashta, cut themselves. You mean Pashta?
Pashta?
Okay. Well, why are there two?
I don't know. You tell me.
Me tell you. It is a Pashta. And I think we discussed this actually in Genesis 1:2. Ya'un Muraoka mentioned that on page 61, that in the standard editions, the post-positive accent called Pashta is repeated if the stress is milel. In other words, milel means on the syllable before the last syllable, while milra is the last syllable. So if it's before the last syllable stress, if it's milel, then the accent is repeated like in Genesis 1:7 with mayim. So it's hamayim, and the accent is post-positive, but the pashta gets repeated over the accented syllable also. So, And so when a word with a stress on the ultima has the pashta, then the stress on the final syllable doesn't do that. But pashta will do that. Pashta will get also over the accented syllable as well as on the end if it's a word that is accented before the last syllable and it has a pashta. So that's how you know it's a pashta, because no other word would have two accents like that. And mayim is stressed milel, not milra. So good. And pashta is what kind of accent?
Disjunctive postpositive.
Good, that's correct.
The next one is also a pashta. And then
Why does that word only have one? Why does the mayim have two and the asher only have one?
because the stress is on the aleph, asher.
Well, it's on the rate. Yeah, the stress is on the final syllable, the sher in asher. So it's asher, not asher, but asher. Well, in mayim, it's hamayim, and so the stress is on the syllable before the last syllable, so the pashtik is repeated over the accented syllable. Well, with asher, it's on the ultima, the final syllable, so it just gets one.
Okay.
Okay, next word.
Tekha is munach.
Munach. Good, which is?
Conjunctive and positive.
All right, that is correct.
Then the next one would be zakef katon, disjunctive and positive. Then another munach, yeah.
On which word?
Wubain.
Ubain. Oh, yeah. I skipped a word, yeah. Zakef katon and Larakia has a zakef katon, which is disjunctive and positive, and then uvain has a munach, which is conjunctive and positive.
And then there is a zakef katon. And asher is tifcha,
Mm-hmm.
disjunctive and positive.
Mm-hmm.
Me'el, wait, is that the right? Yeah, me'el is munach again. And larakia is athnak. And then we have a saluk with a sof pasuk.
And you can see that the athnak doesn't have to divide the verse into two even halves, because here the athnak is way at the on la rakia, right before why he came. But that is kind of where the verse divides.
Mm-hmm.
He said all this stuff, and it was so. So the verse does divide there. So
Would there be like significance like this mark would be good for a semicolon or comma?
they can vary in how much of a division they make, but frequently the major disjunctive accents are where you have the commas and the semicolons and stuff. But it varies depending on the verse. It's not like it'll always have to have whatever. But it, like in Psalm 45, thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. Thy throne, comma, O God. The accents indicate that, which is contrary to the anti-Trinitarian view, which is God is your throne, which violates what the Hebrew accents say. Okay, here in Genesis 1:7, this firmament here, and the waters above the firmament, what's that talking about?
Is that a question?
No, I'm just asking you.
Well, the firmament is like the atmosphere or air,
Okay.
which birds fly in. And so the water is underneath it and above it.
Okay. So the waters underneath, that would be like the sea.
Mm-hmm.
What are the waters above the firmament?
It could refer to like clouds, or there is aspects of water in outer space, comets or frozen ice chunks of stuff.
Okay.
I know that the old theory of canopy has been shut down and is an argument not to be used these days.
So it's not a vapor canopy.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were probably going to say it was.
No,
No. Oh, okay. Interesting. Not a vapor canopy.
I'm more up on that homework.
So is it simply a scientific reason to say it's not a vapor canopy, or is it an exegetical reason? Like, could the exegesis go either way?
I would have to look at my notes at home.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact excuse. Actually, I could probably look up on the internet if you're curious.
So,
Or
yeah.
you could answer me.
there you can make, like Kyle and Delich makes a pretty convincing case that the waters above the heaven are simply like water vapor in the sky versus like lakes and stuff on the earth. I don't think the verse certainly requires a vapor canopy. One reason why is that made me really have to evaluate that is the vapor canopy says the canopy was there before the flood and then it went away. So post-flood, the waters above the heavens are gone. The waters above are not there anymore. But Psalm 148:4 says, "Praise him, ye heavens of heavens, and ye waters that be above the heavens." So it looks like those waters are still there, even when Psalm 148 is being written. So that's kind of a problem. Seems like an exegetical issue with that. So I don't know if I'm going to say that a canopy is like anti-scriptural, but you can make a pretty good case that the waters above could be water vapor in the sky. Or cause the firmament can certainly include both where the birds are in outer space. So any kind of water that's up there. Maybe there was a lot of water up there before the flood, but it certainly isn't required. A vapor canopy theory, I don't think, is required, at least by the text. So, okay. Anything else you want to say on verse 7? Especially that verse, the Psalm verse made me think, oh, wow, okay, it's still there. Let's do verse 8 here.
All right, let me read it. Vayikra Elohim larakia shamayim.
Oh, I just remembered something. Your argument about the capital letter for the day and night, that isn't a very good Hebrew argument. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I said it's not.
Yeah,
in
but
Hebrew,
I mean, it is naming them, so I see what you're saying.
in
But
English, I
yeah.
capitalized it.
And you can say that it is naming it, so it's that. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Shamayim.
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 See the accents on it?
Mayim. Okay. Wayahi Erev. Wayahi Boker.
Voker.
Voker. Yom Shani.
All right.
Which is to say, God called the firmament heaven, and it was evening, and it was morning, second day.
Good. Second day or day 2. Just like Yom Achai could be the first day, this could be the second day too, for same sort of reasons. This is the only day in the creation week where the affirmation that the day is Tov is omitted. The affirmation of being Tov is mentioned 7 times in the account. It's in 1:4, 1:10, 1:12, 1:18, 1:21, 1:25, 1:31. That doesn't mean the second day is bad, of course. Now, the whole creation is described as Tov Ma'od in 131, so obviously it's good. But the life supportive systems aren't finished on day 2. They're finished on day 3. And then God evaluates the creation and twice declares it good on the 3rd day. So I think that's the reason for the omission of the specific statement of the Tov here. Okay, in Genesis 1:8, parse Shamayim, and explain why a comet is beneath the name. And state whether the form is singular, dual, or plural. And state the significance of the answer for the translation of the word and the question of whether there are a multiplicity of heavens. If your standard lexicon is BDB, you may find it helpful to look at Kohler Baumgartner.
The accent causes the inflection on the vowel shamayim is properly a dual. BDB says a plural only. The firmament being named heaven is placed between waters, identifying it as Earth's atmosphere. Paul recognizes 3 heavens in 2 Corinthians 12. The first birds fly in, the second dwell in the stars. Third would be where supernatural spirit entities inhabit, or God's throne is.
So, let's address the questions in rows. So the comets versus a pathak. Shamayim versus Shamayim is because of the athnak, you said, right?
Yep, the
Okay.
accent.
Yep, it's a pausal form. That's hopefully, after like 3 times I've asked that, hopefully you kind of figured that out by now. Because we have several pausal forms. So you said the form is dual, but then you said the lexicon says it's plural. So is it dual or is it plural?
Well, the lexicon says it's plural.
Yeah, it is plural. It's not dual. It looks like a dual, but it is plural because the lexicon says so, and so we just believe what the lexicon says here, basically. Our Kohler Baumgartner says it's apparently a dual, but it's in reality a plural. So, and Gesenius, which you didn't have to look at, says the only apparently dual forms that really plural are the words mayim and shamayim, water and heaven. And he gives like a derivation and stuff about how it came about that way. But he says those are actually plurals, water and heaven. How much weight should you put on the fact that the form is plural and indicating a number of heavens?
Wait, what did you say?
So the fact shamayim is plural. The King James is translated as singular, heaven, in Genesis 1:8, 1:1, 9, and 14. So is that incorrect to translate as singular when this is a plural form?
Obviously, in this text, it wouldn't be because it's referring to the firmament between waters, and if the clouds or whatever vapors would be up there between, say, outer space or whatever, where the stars are not.
Yeah, the lexicon also noted there's no singular form of shamayim. It's always shamayim. So it's not wrong to translate it either as heaven or heavens on its own. There's no singular form in the Old Testament. The LXX normally translates shamayim with a singular uranos, heaven, which it does all through Genesis 1 and actually everywhere else in Genesis. The plural form uranoi does appear in the Greek Old Testament 55 times. Deuteronomy 32:43 is the first instance of the plural. The plural alone of shamayim doesn't support the concept of a plurality of heavens, just the fact that it's a plural on its own. Because, for example, Deuteronomy 4:17, it says winged fowl that fly in the shamayim. So then the birds would be flying in multiple heavens, if you wanted to go with that, which would be a questionable conclusion for sure. So, I just want to type on my writing, try to fix it here.
Would it be more appropriate to translate, say, Genesis 1 as heavens, but then on other things like birds could only fly in one heaven?
I think it would be fine either way. You could translate heaven or heavens. Neither would be wrong. Shamayim could be translated either as singular or plural. There is no plural form. And we can see texts where clearly heaven or sky is fine for the shamayim form. So the form on its own, you wouldn't want to conclude anything about a multiplicity of heavens simply from the form. You certainly wouldn't want to conclude there's 2 heavens from the fact it looks like a dual when it's a plural. But the form itself isn't going to tell you. But the fact that the plural form doesn't prove multiplicity of heavens doesn't prove there's only one either, because you have texts that refer to the heaven of heavens.
I was just going to ask about that.
Yeah, so that would show a plurality, I think. Heaven of heavens. And then that's in like Deuteronomy 10:14, 1 Kings 8:27, 2 Chronicles 2:6, and 6:18, Nehemiah 9:6. So that would suggest the existence of more than one. And then you have the New Testament telling you there are three heavens, 2 Corinthians 12:12. So
how is that in Hebrew, the heaven of heavens?
it's
Shemayim.
yeah, it's Shemay Hashemayim.
Okay.
Shemay, the construct form, and Hashemayim.
Okay.
Heavens of heavens.
So even the construct is
Yeah.
plural.
Even the construct, yep, the construct's plural. So, and you can demonstrate that all the heavens are part of the ex nihilo creation from like Nehemiah 9:6, where it says, "Thou, Jehovah, has made heaven the heaven of heavens," stuff like that. So, he created the whole universe, including all the heavens, not just like the Mormon God who rules a single planet, something like that. So, so here, unlike even also in like the pagan epics, like Baal rode on the clouds. They had these sky gods and stuff, but here the heavens and the celestial inhabitants are merely servants of God and his creatures. They're not autonomous authorities. They don't have rule. The heavens don't have some kind of autonomous rule. They're created by God, even for our benefit, actually. God put this stuff out there from like the second days and called good apart from the life forms on day 3. So you could translate it where it says, "And God called." You could say, "And God called to the expanse, to the firmament, your name is going to be Shemayim," something like that would be fine. I'm just going to mention this. This will be the last thing we're going to talk about here, and this is our last verse we have for today. But a lot of theological liberals and atheists and skeptics say that the Genesis account is dependent on the pagan Babylonian epic Enuma Elish. You might even hear people say that at the university that this is from this pagan epic. Enuma Elish was discovered in the library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, which is Mosul, Iraq. And the copy that we found dates the 600s BC. So the actual copy is way after Moses wrote the Pentateuch in the 1400s. We don't know when it was made up, the Enuma Elish. The two major views are either in the time of Nebuchadnezzar I, which is 1124 to 1103 BC, or the 13th to 12th centuries BC in a period called the Late Kassite period. So, assuming Moses, the traditional date for Moses writing the Pentateuch is 1446. So actually Moses would have written it before either of the two scholarly dates for the composition of Enuma Elish. So it would be very hard for him to be dependent on it if it wasn't written yet. So it's not dependent on Enuma Elish because there's no evidence that the creation myth of the Babylonians even existed when Moses wrote. And another reason it's not dependent on it is it isn't like Genesis at all. I'm going to give you this section here from Enuma Elish on the creation of the sky. Okay? You tell me if this sounds like Genesis 1, okay? If it sounds like very parallel. Okay, this is what it said, how the sky was created. Then the Lord, Marduk, paused to view her dead body, Tiamat, that he might divide the monster and do artful works. He split her like a shellfish into 2 parts. Half of her he set up and sealed it as sky, pulled down the bar and posted guards. He bade them to allow not her waters to escape. So the sky was made not just from pre-existing material, but from one half of the cadaver of an evil goddess. And then he makes locks and guards to prevent Tiamat from unleashing her waters on the earth. So heaven is this antagonist being restrained. And here's the account from Enuma Elish of the creation of the heaven and the earth. So it says, "Creation of the firmament and earth, the Lord, Marduk, trod upon the hinder part of Tiamat, and with unsparing club he split her skull. He cut the arteries of her blood and caused the north wind to carry it to out-of-the-way places. When his fathers saw this, they were glad and rejoiced and sent him dues and greeting gifts. The Lord rested, examining her dead body, to divide the abortion and to create ingenious things therewith. He split her open like a mussel into 2. Half of her he sat in place and formed the sky as a roof. The Lord mentioned the dimensions of the Apsu, and a great structure, its counterpart, he established, namely Ashara, the earth, the great Ashara, which he made as a canopy." So that is from the ancient Near Eastern texts and translation. And you can see it sounds very similar to Genesis 1:8. Taking the goddess's body, taking her skull, splitting it open, making her body in parts. It's obviously the same. I mean, they sound so much alike. Right? I mean, it's so not parallel. One, it wasn't written, and two, it's bizarre. So if people say that Genesis is dependent on Numa Elish, they don't know what they're talking about.
I never read it.
Yeah, it's okay. I think it wouldn't be bad to read, but it's not dependent on it. Okay, let's read number 624 to 26, and please take the tests by next class period. Usually when people say the Bible is dependent on this or that pagan myth, they've not really looked into it much themselves. They just heard it through the grapevine, and usually it's not really the greatest case. Okay, you read verse 24, I'll read verse 25, and then you read 26 in Numbers 6, 24, 26.
Yava rekaka.
Yivarakecha.
Yavarakaka. Yehovah. Wayish mareka.
Ya'er Yehovah panai elecha wihunika.
Yehovah.
Oh, Yisa at the very end is the first one.
Yisa. Yehovah. Panai elecha. Wayasem. Laka.
Shalom. Amen. By the way, the Genesis account sounds a whole lot more noble and beautiful than this ridiculous thing about that account too. All right, well, you're dismissed.